Welcome to the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. I apologize in advance if I am out of line here.
Great yourselves, boys. We're going in.
Am I hallucinating here? Just what in the hell do you think you're doing?
I can't believe you.
I'm not reading. I'm just looking at the picture.
Welcome to the Cold Hard Truth on Sports.
Welcome, everybody, to the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. I am your host, Matthew Long. Another great week here of the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. This is episode number 295. And we are steaming along. What an entertaining week this week in college football. A lot of close games. There's as far as picks go, I shit the bed. I've never done this terrible on picks. And we'll get into that a little bit tonight. Co-host Kevin Crest will join us here in just a few minutes. So, getting ready for that. But if you guys want to chime in tonight, you head on over to Facebook. We're on Facebook Live. You can type your comments or questions in on Facebook Live, as well as heading on over to listen on Spreaker.com or the free Spreaker app, which is the best way to listen to the show, or over on BlogTalkRadio like many of you do. So I see a few of you already over here on Facebook Live. Hi, how's it going? Appreciate it. But just a big week in college football. It was a fun week in college football. Really busy week for me. I had a wedding. So, balancing being able to catch some of the games and do all the things that are involved in a wedding was kind of tough at times, but it was enjoyable. It's always nice to be around, around friends and stuff and catch up. So it's always fun. Can you move that down on my screen? Thanks. There's a lot of tight games. A lot of games that were much closer than they probably should have been. And there's some teams from the top that fell this week that, in hindsight really isn't all that shocking. But nonetheless, they're teams that probably shouldn't have lost, but yet they did. We'll get into that. The NFL has kind of a similar kind of vibe to it. There's a lot of teams that are 1-2, and very much in the hunt for a playoff race. It just seems it's starting out as one of those seasons that it might end up going down to the wire and a tiebreaker. At least that's the way it looks 3 weeks in. So, looking forward to getting into our NFL picks this week and kind of dissecting some of these teams moving forward in the NFL and college football. So right now I'm going to bring on my co-host. He is the author of the P.K. Frazier novel series, which you can go and get on Amazon right now or shortly after the show or while you're listening to the show, either way. So go and check those out. He is Mr. Kevin Crest. How are you doing tonight, Kevin?
Oh, I'm licking my wounds from the football prediction Saturday. Wow.
You did better than me.
Ouch.
You did a lot better than me.
18-10 this week. 18-10. That's a bad week. But you know what? I was 16-12 against the spread. So if you're looking at my picks to bet, then you had a good week. Anytime you end up 4 games over 500 against the spread, that's a pretty good week. So
you like the ones that
tale of 2 weeks with that. But what's really bad was the first 8 games out of the shoot Saturday, I picked correctly, both straight up and against the spread. So I wrote off, went to the left for the Arkansas San Jose State game, feeling pretty good about myself. And by the time I got home, it was kind of ugly. So anyway, but we'll try again this week.
So you picked Tulane?
I don't know. Did you happen to catch? Yes, Tulane blew me up. Pittsburgh at the end of the game blew me up against UCF. TCU stumbling against SMU. I mean, you just name them.
Utah lost. That was another one of mine. Boise State came through.
I did pick USC over Utah, so that was a good pick. I picked Cal over Ole Miss. I had some good picks, but
I had Cal too.
Then it just derailed. A&M didn't show up at home against Auburn. Really, they never were in the game. There were some others that didn't go our way, but I don't know if you saw it. And if I didn't actually watch it, I wouldn't have believed it. The last game of the night, Saturday night, was Washington State hosting UCLA, and midway through the third quarter, it was Washington State 49, UCLA 17. And all I would think about was that the line was 18.5, and it looked like Washington State was going to cover easily. And next thing I know, Washington State loses 67-63 in the last minute of that game. It was unbelievable. If I hadn't actually seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah, I had them change that game.
The kid from Washington State threw 9 touchdown passes and loses the game. Unbelievable.
In regulation, by the way.
Turnover in the fourth quarter. Yes, it was just unbelievable. That was a fitting end of the week, actually, in my mind. But still, great weekend for college football. This week, of course, we get into conference schedules in earnest, in a big way, and so we will. We'll see what happens. And as you mentioned, kind of wacky stuff went on in the NFL a little bit. We still have more on the Antonio Brown saga, who is now an ex-NFL player. And I think, if you remember correctly, I predicted he would be out of the league pretty quickly, and he was. He is. We'll see how long that lasts, of course. I mean, there's always a team that'll take a chance on somebody like that. But
until
he has some serious issues.
Yeah, until the legal side gets shored up, nobody will touch him. And like I said last week, if Antonio Brown goes on the exempt list, or it looks like he could be charged, or someone is coming with legal charges, the Patriots would likely release him. And usually when you're released from the Patriots, that's the end of your career. That's usually the last stop for most players. Yeah, ask Tim Tebow. He decided to go to baseball. The
thing about Antonio Brown is that it's not just the legal. I mean, there's so much going on there with that young man that you just have to kind of put up your hands and say, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what his agent's doing. I don't know what kind of advice he's getting, if he's just not taking any advice. All he had to do, and Dan Patrick said it very well today on his show, was, all he had to do was just show up and play football. And he would have made $30 million guaranteed with the Raiders. But for some reason, he couldn't do that. All he had to do with the Patriots was to show up and play football. He gets $9 million. which for most of us would set us for life, right?
Yeah, probably.
And all you do is just play a season, and he'd been fine, but he couldn't do that. And so, his social media, his tweets, his social media posts, and all this stuff has worked against him, and he just hasn't learned. And I don't know if his agent, and Drew Rosenhaus, of course, is not without controversy himself, as he represents some of the biggest names in the game, including Bryce Harper, who signed that blockbuster deal this past offseason in baseball. But I guess he's about the money. But Antonio Brown has to get his life together. I mean, it just seems to be some real issues there. And latest is he's enrolled back at Central Michigan. I think it's Central Michigan where he went to school.
Yeah, online
classes. Enrolled in school, so so we'll see what's going on there. But couldn't get away without an Antonio Brown reference, and this might be the last one we have of Antonio Brown with any relevance in football. We'll have to see, and I'm not even sure, since he's not playing, if anybody really cares what the outcome of the legal issues are or not, because if he's not in the league, who really cares? Because he's just another guy. And that's going to be tough for him to take as well. But that's right now, he's just not a college student.
Yeah, so it's something we're going to have to watch, probably at a distance moving forward. But let's get into this past week here in college football. How about Old Dominion looking like they were about to knock off another ACC team this year? Your Hokies last year, and this year it looked like they were going to take out Virginia Tech there for a little bit.
That's where you start, really. You're going to go there, okay? By the way, on my LinkedIn post and my group post tonight, I basically said that you and I disagree on everything about sports, and so that was my tease to get people to listen tonight. and you just go right into it. Now, in all seriousness, I mean, the thing about Old Dominion is, because of the Virginia Tech being the two until Old Dominion came on, were the only two Virginia schools in the FBS. I think Old Dominion has a chip on their shoulder. And they went up to Charlottesville and took a 10-0 lead, I believe, on Virginia. And I think they had the lead into the third quarter. So that game was in question.
Into the fourth quarter.
Virginia did what Virginia Tech did.
Yeah, it was 17-14 into the fourth quarter.
Virginia Tech did. There it was, yeah. And Virginia scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth to win the game. But and so they come with a chip on their shoulder. They play over their skis a little bit against those two schools, and they've shown the last 3 games against those two schools. They beat Virginia Tech last year in Norfolk, and then this year went up to Blacksburg and gave them all they could handle, and then go up to Charlottesville to play Virginia. And Virginia is a very good team. Virginia has the best team they've had in at least 15 years. I think in 2004, I think they went 4-0. That's the last time, and that's what they are right now. Is they're 4-0. Pretty good team. I don't think they're as good as their ranking, but they're a pretty good team. But they did beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh early in the season. Pittsburgh showed what they had by, Pittsburgh lost to Penn State by 7, and then beats UCF, snapping their 17-game winning streak?
27.
No, 25 games. Sorry, 25-game regular season winning streak. And so Pittsburgh's a pretty formidable team. They'll make noise in the ACC Coastal, obviously, and so Virginia's pretty good. So I think it's a good effort by Old Dominion. I think Virginia did what they had to. I did not have Virginia, covering. They were a 30-point favorite in that game.
Yeah, that's tough to do.
I had them. I did not have them covering, so I won that one against the spread. But Old Dominion just gets up for the games. That's what about and Appalachian State beat North Carolina this past weekend. You talk about the ACC, how dismal they are. I mean, it is just it is hard to watch the ACC this season. They are, except for Clemson, and Clemson hasn't exactly. I know they've won by a lot of points, but haven't been as super impressive as you would think. Trevor Lawrence has not been, but teams get up for these games, and the emotion goes a long way, and I think that's what happened with Old Dominion, both in Blacksburg and in Charlottesville, in both of those games.
And another team that I missed mightily on was Washington BYU. I had BYU winning this game. That was one of my upset picks of the week. Them and Oklahoma State. BYU just didn't show up at all. They couldn't put points up on the board, and to the contrary, Washington seemed to be able to have no problem doing that. They take the victory 45-19. Neither team scoring in the fourth quarter. What did you make of this? What do you think really went wrong for BYU?
Well, and I wrote, for people listening, and I've been posting my picks on the Cold Hard Truth and Sports site, so it's there for them to go back and look at my picks for last week. And I wrote this about that game in my prediction. Is I said BYU has 2 overtime wins. I don't think they'll be able to pull off another one against a refocused Washington team. I basically just figured that Washington would be too much for them, and they were. I predicted a 9-point outcome in that game. Washington obviously did way better than that. And I just think BYU kind of the fine of the gig was up. They beat a really bad Tennessee team in overtime, and then they were able to pull one out against USC. USC made some big mistakes down the stretch in that game, and let BYU kind of let them win that game. But BYU's not that good. They're decent. They're just not that good. I think their preseason were somewhere in the mid-50s or mid-40s, mid-50s in terms of FBS ranking, power ranking. So this game didn't surprise me. It surprised me a little bit in the fact that BYU, let up so many points. I mean, that was surprised me that Washington was able to put up that kind of number on BYU. But I think that was just kind of that thing where finally a team was exposed with what they are, and that's BYU. So that one didn't surprise me too much. The only surprise there was that it was such a waxing, but I didn't expect BYU to be able to hang with Washington. The only advantage they had was it was in Provo, and teams have a tough time in Provo. There's some altitude issues and things, but Washington.
That was the big reason. That was one of the big reasons because that I picked them to win this upset was in Provo, the altitude. Teams have seemed to kind of wither, and BYU hasn't been dominant, but they've been able to just hang in there the entire time. I thought that might be an issue here for Washington. Plus, Washington last week, or the week before, had lost a game that they shouldn't have. So I thought maybe that right now that they would be susceptible, especially going to Provo, but that was another miss for me.
And what's interesting this week is that you have USC traveling to Washington. Those teams both played BYU, one losing to BYU, one beating BYU. So that'll be interesting. But no, as I looked at that Washington game, and some of the games I spend more time on than others, and so some of the games I missed last week were kind of SMU TCU. I was like, didn't spend a lot of time on that game. But the SEC games kind of kicked my butt last week in a few of them. But another game last week. I mean, let's go back and talk about that UCF Pittsburgh game. I mean, that game basically knocks UCF out of a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
UCF now can't make a claim to anything. I mean, and I understand that they're still probably a pretty good football team, and they'll probably they may go 11-1 or 12-1 actually if they win their half of the American, but they can't make a claim to anything now, so they're off.
I don't. Okay.
It kind of,
I disagree. I don't think this changes much of anything for them other than their chance at the playoff. It really doesn't. They went up against a Pittsburgh team that everybody writes off and doesn't pay attention to, that has been working and developing. Pitt's not a bad team. They had Penn State dead to rights and let that game slip away. They should have beat Penn State. So for them to keep that game close, the defense play hard. Yeah, exactly. And it's at home. Pitt always, this is what I keep saying, Pitt always plays tough at home. Did they lost one earlier to a team that's probably less than they are. But that's the same thing. But still, I mean, that stuff happens. They're a Power 5 team. You can't. So this is what they talk about. Power 5 teams are susceptible. The bottom half is susceptible to a group of 5 loss any week. The same thing goes to the top of the group of 5 teams. They're susceptible to a loss to any of the Power 5 teams at any point in time. And again, for UCF, this is a Power 5 loss. It's not like, they lost to La Tech or, directional Texas State, It's not overall a big deal as far as the loss. They took the loss to an ACC team. Yes, we both agree that the ACC is probably worse than the American this season, but that's the thing is they might have came in there and we may have seen them kind of overlook them a little bit. But I don't think this changes much for USC as far as the overall look of the team moving forward. Nobody should sell this team short. UCF is hold on. UCF is still the best team in Florida.
They can't get in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's what changed.
They can't make a
That's
case
it.
for the playoffs.
That's it. That's the only thing that changed.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
What I meant.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Everything else, I mean, they can still be the group of 5 representative for the New Year's Day Bowl, because the only other team right now that looks like they'll be in contention with is Boise State. And so, UCF is still ranked, I believe. They're still ranked, 21st this week, I think. And of course, that'll all change once the college playoff committee comes out, because they'll change some of these rankings because it's all about that. But they remained 22nd in the AP poll, so they're still relevant. But they can't possibly make a case for the playoffs now.
Yeah, it would be very, very tough. Very, very tough.
It'll be very difficult for them to do so, right? Because losing to it's not like they lost to Pittsburgh. I mean, it's not like they lost to Oklahoma. If Houston had just lost Oklahoma and won the rest of their table, who knows? I mean, that's a much different thing, right? But but I agree with you on the rest of it. I don't think it changes what we think of UCF in terms. I mean, they lost by 1 point.
Yeah.
At the end of the game. And of course they were down early and then they came back, and the fact that they took that lead and then lost it. But I agree with you in the sense that it doesn't change who they are, but it does change. They're not going to be having any national championship parades this year, because they got lost.
Yeah.
I think it was a great run, good story. And as we both talked, I would like to see UCF become a Power 5 team. That's where I'd like to see is for UCF to get into a Power 5 conference. They have the student body, they have the on-campus stadium, they have everything that they need to do that. They're the largest, I believe, the largest on-campus school in the country. in terms of enrollment, and so they're huge. So that would solve that for me. I mean, I'd like to see them play more of these games. I'd like to see them play ACC schedule or a Pac-12 schedule or a Big 12. Frankly, I think you and I have talked about the Big 12 being the most likely landing spot for UCF at some point. But they're a good football team.
Unless the American really thinks that they can make a push to being a Power 6 conference, but they'd have to make some other moves to do that, and they wouldn't be able to do it with all the teams that they have. Because even if you take a look at the American at the top, being better than the ACC, this year, still, what you have underneath is the troubling part. Cincinnati clearly is good, but we've seen what happened when they go against the top of even the Big Ten. Ohio State rolled them. Wasn't even a competition. We saw Houston look like they were going to try to play them tough, and just have too many mistakes, and they lost by 18. I don't think that's such a terrible loss, but still, that's the top of the Big 12. I don't see many American teams right now going up against and beating the top of Power 5 conferences. But again, that really isn't the argument. Are they deserving of the notoriety as a Power 5 team, like a Power 5 team? Like I said, I'm adamant that UCF is the best college football team in Florida right now. I would take them over the other 5 schools pretty easily. So, that's the thing is because these traditional powers and stuff like that.
I'd like to see them play Miami, though. I'd like to see them play Miami, right? Miami's kind of a schizophrenic kind of team right now. I don't know how good Miami is going to be, but I think UCF would be favored against Miami right now. I don't care where they play it, whether it's down in Miami or whether it's in Orlando. I don't care. But I agree with you. Right now, they're the best team in Florida.
Yeah,
they're the best team in a lot of states. You can throw a lot of states in there. I don't think Mississippi has a team as good as UCF. Mississippi State's pretty good, but I right now I don't know. You'd be hard pressed to, for me that those would be good games, and I would like to see UCF move up. I really would. They've done what they need to. I don't know why the Big 12 is not big on expansion right now, but when they do, I don't see why they wouldn't. If they can have West Virginia, why not have UCF?
Yeah. What West Virginia really isn't really much to talk about right now. Dana Holgorsen leaving there looks like he left the cupboard bare. I don't know. It just literally he showed how much impact he had on their ability to win football games. So obviously coaches make a difference, a significant difference. In this case, obviously with West Virginia, he was one of the major differences in that program. So Nebraska pulled out a tight one against Illinois this past weekend. The Illini are a team that I've been talking about for a couple years. Lovie Smith has done a great job of recruiting, and he just had such a young team the last couple of years, and it looks like Illinois is starting to figure some things out. And clearly this weekend, whatever it was, a lot of it was blocking schemes and guys missing assignments, but nonetheless, the Illini were able to take advantage of Nebraska and go up by a couple scores early in the game, and allow this game to really drag on into the fourth quarter, even though Nebraska ended up winning and staying in the conversation. Actually, winning that game landed them College game day this weekend. It will be in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm debating going or not, but it's kind of, they're kind of in a situation where the turnovers, Nebraska commits turnovers, a lot of fumbles, struggling with the ball security and discipline has really allowed teams that you would think that they would just, take the air out of, allow them to keep sailing on in the game, for inexplicable reasons. So it'll be really interesting to see how the game turns out this weekend in Lincoln with College game day there. I don't know if that's going to add any extra motivation, being in a primetime slot, being on College game day, or whatnot. But it's making one hell of a story. I think there's a lot of college football fans that are saying that, or thinking that Ohio State should definitely run away with this one. But, I mean, they were very close to beating them last year. They should have beat them last year. So we'll see. In some respects, Nebraska looks a lot more like Michigan this year than I thought. Because, what's really killed them is, again, the discipline, the fumbles, and just generally those bad decisions like that in the game. Nebraska, on the other hand, has had a pretty stout defense with some few exceptions here and there. This was a game where Nebraska gave up a lot of rushing yards. They were in the top 15. No, they were eighth or ninth in the country in run defense, and then I think they really got gashed this game against the Illini. Did you happen to catch that game or not?
No, I didn't catch that one. I caught a lot. You want me to run down the games I actually watched the other night, this weekend? Let me do that. I watched Houston Tulane Thursday night. Disappointing. I really thought Houston was going to, pull that one out. Watched USC Utah and Air Force Boise State Friday night. I watched some of Florida Tennessee on Saturday. Watched Wisconsin Michigan. Watched some of Ole Miss of California. Watched Auburn Texas A&M. Watched some of Oregon Stanford. Watched Oklahoma State and Texas. Watched Notre Dame Georgia. Watched UCLA Washington State. I was at the San Jose State Arkansas game, and I watched a little bit of South Carolina Missouri. Those were the games I actually caught, and I would have caught more, but I was actually at the Arkansas San Jose State game for a while, so kind of missed a window there. But watched a lot of football, watched a lot of teams. Watched Florida State Louisville. Watched part of that game as well. By the way, the Seminoles look like they're starting to come around a little bit under Willie Taggart. Last couple of weeks, they've shown some signs of life. Well,
let me step in there. I think that's true, but only because they did what I said, put in Alex Hornibrook. And that's what they did. They started Alex Hornibrook. And wow, you put a legit quarterback, somebody that can manage the game, and look at the outcome. Alex Hornibrook should have been starting since the beginning of the season. I don't know why they were hanging on so much to, the guys that they've had there that clearly haven't worked. You have quarterbacks that have just gotten used to losing. You
So
brought
now
in a
I'm
grad
sure
transfer. You brought in a transfer for a reason.
he's out. So,
You know.
yeah. But yeah, so we'll see. I mean, yeah, it's obviously Florida State's not the team they were, and maybe maybe Jimbo Fisher, left when the leaving was good. Maybe he left Willie Taggart an empty cupboard, as you mentioned before, about Dan Haverson leaving for Houston. But we will see. I just think Florida State is looking a little bit better. I mean, I'm not sure they're a 500 team, but they're in the ACC, so they're going to get some easy games because the ACC just isn't all that good. But the Atlantic division is a little bit tougher than the Coastal. NC State's not bad. Boston College is pretty good. Their fourth quarter collapse against Kansas notwithstanding. I mean, Boston College has played probably one bad quarter this season. They're pretty good. And so, Clemson, of course, is Clemson. Wake Forest is 4-0 and looking actually pretty good. Wake Forest travels to Boston College this week, and that'll give us an idea of where those two teams are in terms of maybe pulling an upset on Clemson, which is unlikely. But Clemson has come close the last couple of years. 2 years ago, they lost to Syracuse, and last year Syracuse took them to the mat. And so Clemson's having some close games in the last couple of years. They usually have one a season that somebody can sneak up on them. So we shall see about that. But the going back to your Ohio State-Nebraska game, Nebraska's got to show up on defense a lot better than they have. I mean, that's the question. I mean, Ohio State obviously, put up 76 against Miami, Ohio. Big deal. Miami, Ohio, who are they? They're in a very weak MAC, but 76 points. A lot of points. And, Nebraska gave up a lot of points to Illinois. Now, I don't think people realize how good Illinois is. They're pretty good. They just, they're in the Big Ten, and they might be the 10th best team in the Big Ten, but that's still pretty good, considering that the Big Ten is really strong. Michigan is struggling, but everybody's talking about how bad Michigan looked on Saturday, but I think what's being overlooked here is Wisconsin's really good.
Yeah.
They're so much better than anybody thought they were going to be, right? I mean, until the fourth quarter, they hadn't given up a point all season. And I know that, who they play, all that kind of stuff, but they did play South Florida in Tampa week 1 and won 49-0. South Florida's not that bad. And the next week they humiliated, somebody 56, but they, this Wisconsin's extremely good on both sides of the ball. And even when Jonathan Taylor went out Saturday for a little while, they didn't miss a beat. Now he did rush for over 200 yards on Saturday, and I agree with you. He's most of the offense, but he went out and they still scored points. They still gained yards. So I think Wisconsin is one of these teams that you sit to look at and go, oh my gosh! All of a sudden, they were not. They were not the pick in the Big Ten West. Nebraska was one of the teams. I picked Nebraska. I don't know if you did. I picked Nebraska to win the Big Ten West.
Yeah.
That's not where I sit today. I mean, if I was to redo everything today,
yeah, obviously,
I'd have to pick Wisconsin. Now,
I would too. I agree.
Now,
but the thing is, because Wisconsin had some questions. Some legitimate questions along the offensive line, at quarterback, and how were they going to respond on defense? Those were the three big questions that I had coming in, and I hadn't seen or heard or had much to go on regarding that. that's really what stopped me from picking Wisconsin. I thought those were three pretty big questions. And maybe a lot of the hype surrounding Nebraska preseason really drowned out any thought of other competition. I also thought Minnesota was going to be better than they are. Illinois looked like should be better than they are. Northwestern looked like she should. Again, Northwestern, that's just why I always say, like, there's a lot of teams I won't go game by game schedule. Well, Northwestern's one of those teams, they could lose or beat anybody in the country in any given game. They're just so bipolar. I have no idea. I swear, it's like throwing spit wads at the wall in the dark. You know, you don't even know what you're aiming at. So, and that's the thing, is that's just Northwestern. So, did it look like, and a lot of people, yeah, it looked like Nebraska could be that. But then they started off the season very similar to what they did last year. Then they lose to Colorado. That loss to Colorado, for me, killed every bit of hype coming in. And I was like, wow, they really haven't learned how to finish games. I'll give you the first couple games. You kind of stumbled, you overcome, and you win. And then you lose to Colorado again. In overtime, you know? Okay, so you don't have a kicker. Well, don't get in situations where you're going to kick the fucking ball. I don't know. You're better personnel and offensive-wise and defensive-wise than all four of the teams that you've played this season. Why are you in situations where you have to worry about a field goal? Score touchdowns. Don't worry about field goals. They should be able to do that. With the talent and the speed and the athletes and the coaching staff, the scheme that they run, they should be able to do that. They should be able to just literally gas everybody that they come up against. But that's the thing, they haven't. They've committed turnovers. So, I mean, I could actually tell you, going back, and I wanted to take time to give credit to Lovey and what he's done there at Illinois, and how, and give the respect to this Illini program. But if you really watch the game, it was for some weird reason, Illinois seemed to be winning the game on the scoreboard, but Nebraska was winning it across the rest of the game. It really seemed it was like the Twilight Zone. Nebraska actually possessed the ball for 37 minutes of the game. Over half the game. It was theirs. For basically 3 quarters, they owned the football. The Illini had it for 22 minutes. The Illini were only, I think, what was it? I think it was like I'll pull it back up here. They were 1 for 16 on third downs. 1 for 16. They converted 1 third down the entire game. And they were still in it. It doesn't, you look at it and it doesn't make any sense. Because they were getting pushed around, all except for those times where they scored. And then they would just gash them. They would get gashed. They gave up over 200 yards in rushing, which was really the worrisome part, because Nebraska's defense plays sideline to sideline, and it really is, it moves well. So when I looked at Nebraska and the way the defense plays and the way it's set up to play, it should play well against this run team because they're good against the run. Because what they do is they beat you up so you can't get the run going, and then you're pressing stuff to try to push it downfield, then they get takeaways. That's how it works. So when their defense is doing well, that's what's working. when they're not doing well, they're missing assignments. They're not setting the edge like they're supposed to. They're getting overcommitted upfield, or they're just abandoning their gap. Sometimes they're just getting beat. Like on the touchdown, like on that touchdown play at the beginning of the game, DiCaprio Bootle just got beat. He's faster than that guy, but he got beat. And the guy had him by about a step and a half. So, that's the thing is, it's just when they're making mistakes and when they're getting caught off base, it's hurting them. And then they're missing tackles. Like when you miss when you get stiff arm and you roll, that's like the worst look. But if you look at the highlights, it looked like Illinois was really, really playing a really good, solid football game. But a lot of it was, Nebraska, 4 turnovers. The score should have been 70-38. Should have been 70-38, where it should have been, but it wasn't. So, I take these close games with a grain of salt in some respects, but you have to be able to, understand that the truth of the matter is regardless of what the potential is and what you want to think of something or someone, what they're showing you is really what you have to look at. And the fact of the matter is, when it comes to scoring points and stopping teams from scoring, they're really boom or bust, because it has looked very treacherous at times. 4 fumbles. 4 fumbles in the game. 4 lost fumbles. So you're losing every fumble you fumble. It's not even like you're getting your fumbles back. Adrian Martinez did a good job not throwing an interception. But when you put up 673 yards of offense, you're 11 for 19, so over 50% on third downs. You're 50% on fourth downs. You're clearly moving the ball. 31 first downs versus 14. Like, the game is so one-sided. But 10 penalties for 70 yards and 4 turnovers, that really kills. And then on top of that, you give up, 221 yards. Not only those four turnovers all turned over to, so those are effectively lost points for Nebraska, 28 lost points for Nebraska, and 28 points gained for Illinois. That actually makes it, 70-10? If you swing those points back, even half. I'm just saying, it was a very one-sided game in actual statistical measures. But on the scoreboard, it was only 4 points. And unfortunately, for a lot of teams that are talented, good teams, the most important stat is the score. So it doesn't matter how talented or many yards you gain. If you're not getting points out of it and stopping the other team, then it doesn't matter. So, but yes, Illinois has come a long ways, and Lovey has that program going in the right direction. So I look forward to seeing them winning some more games that others might think they won't. I think Minnesota this weekend could be one of those games. Minnesota, they have a really good running back core, and they're about to lose one of their running backs. He's entering the transfer portal. So we'll see what goes on there, because Minnesota has been a really unfortunate case this season. You know, they're still 3-0, but it has been the ugliest 3-0 you could have. I mean, Georgia Southern, it was a 35-2 victory over Georgia Southern. Fresno State was 38-35. South Dakota State was 28-21. Those don't sound like scores that would reflect that what was expected out of Minnesota at the beginning of the year. They have Purdue this week. Illinois is on a bye this week, but Minnesota is at home against Illinois. So they go to Purdue this weekend, which, again, that's a pick'em game. It seems like at this point, from what I've seen from Minnesota, I would pick Purdue, even though Purdue is 1-2. Purdue's loss have come to an underrated Navy team and TCU. So they put 42 up on Vandy, and Vandy is, you know, one of those teams that are trying to find their place. It seems like Purdue, like Minnesota. So, be interested watching move forwards. What do you make of these teams like Purdue, like Minnesota? You know, teams that we feel like maybe they should be doing better, but they're just, for some reason,
they're just middling.
falling short.
Yeah, they're just middling Power 5 programs. I mean, they haven't had much success in recent years, and Purdue's, I guess the coach there, Jeff Bro, it's a good coach. I mean, they're okay. The trouble is, they're not with the Wisconsins and even the Nebraskas of the world, and they certainly can't take on Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State. I mean, they might pull a win now and then, like Minnesota did last year against Ohio State. Was it Minnesota beat Ohio State last year? It was Ohio State's only loss of the year. I mean, occasionally they'll turn one of those, but they can't compete on a week-to-week basis. They have to catch lightning in a bottle, have a really good season, and hope to have a 9-win season every now and then. That's just where they are as a program. I mean, it's just so difficult. The Big Ten is tough. I mean, it's a good league. I think top to bottom, it's probably the best league in college football. Although the Pac-12 is getting up there. Arizona's improving. Arizona State with Herm Edwards is improving. Went into Michigan State, knocked them off, and then stubbed their toe last week. But I think the Big Ten's just very difficult. There's so many good teams. It's a big league, and there's a lot of good teams. And the good teams are really good. I mean, Wisconsin is. I mean, we kind of got off the track there talking about Nebraska, but Wisconsin, they've got a game October 26th against Ohio State. They go into the horseshoe. If they both hold true to form, obviously you're hoping that Ohio State gets knocked off this weekend, but if those two teams maintain that form into mid-October, that's going to be a monster game. Because that could shape up as, if Wisconsin and Ohio State continue to play at the level they've been playing, let me put it that way, and they've both been playing at a very high level. Nobody's come close to them, either team. Now, Wisconsin played a far better team in Michigan than Ohio State's net this year so far. But a 42-0 drubbing against Cincinnati who's decent. That told me a lot about Ohio State, just like Wisconsin's win over Michigan did. And I mean, I don't count much in those 14 points that Michigan scored. They were just desperation stuff near the end of the game. That game was never even in jeopardy, never even close. And so, I just think that's that Wisconsin is now. If Michigan all of a sudden loses like 6 games this year, all of a sudden we'll go, oh well, they're not any good, so that Wisconsin will be diminished. I'm not sure that'll be the case. We'll have to see. Once again, we've talked about this before. It's only the 3rd game of the year for Wisconsin, and same with Michigan. And Michigan, always lost to Army. So, how good are they really? We don't know yet. But we'll know a lot about Wisconsin. They play Northwestern this week, and they also have Michigan State on the schedule from the other half of the league. And then you end up with Ohio State later on. So we'll find out a lot about Wisconsin here pretty quickly. And we'll see a lot about Ohio State on Saturday against Nebraska, going into Nebraska. But Nebraska's defense has to shore up. They got to cut down the turnovers, and they have to play better. They've not played well. They have to play better, or that game's going to be over mid-second quarter. I mean, Ohio State strikes fast and often.
Well, here's the thing: is
And
if Ohio State starts slow against Nebraska,
turn the ball over. If Nebraska turns the ball over,
it's game.
it's all over.
Yeah.
They cannot turn the ball over like they did against Illinois. They can't. They just cannot do that. I know Nebraska gave Ohio State a good game last year, and probably should have won that game. But I feel like Nebraska played better last year than they have so far this year, at least defensively. And so we'll have to see what happens on Saturday. I'm interested in the game. I'm actually in Nebraska. I like Nebraska, but they have to play better. They can't be beating Illinois by 4 or 6 or whatever the heck it is. They can't be doing that. They have to dominate, because Ohio State's dominant at this point anyway. Now, they haven't played the league game. Is this their first? I think this is Ohio State's first conference game. So, we'll see how they do.
And Nebraska's young along the offensive line too. So, I'm interested. It worries me to see how Chase Young's going to wreak havoc there. I mean, he's tied for the most sacks for a defensive leader. He's 7 sacks on the season. He's tied actually with Betiku Jr. from Illinois, who Nebraska played last weekend. So it's obviously they're not getting much of a break there, and Damon Arnett. Damon Arnett is one of those guys. I think I'm really interested to see how he plays. The cornerback for Ohio State. I know going into this year, he's one of the guys that a lot of scouts have had their eyes on for NFL. He's a senior. He's 6 foot, 195. He has 1 interception, 3 pass deflections, and 7 solo tackles. So he can hold it down on the corner. But what I want to see is how is Nebraska going to utilize the skills that they have. I think Robinson, and Spielman match up really well for Nebraska and give them a pretty big advantage in some respects. And then they have some bigger receivers too that we haven't seen a lot. I don't think there's many guys size-wise can match up with Jake Stoll, the tight end for Nebraska. So I think what really it comes down to is Taylor Martinez making good, quick decisions and getting rid of the ball, keeping it up tempo, and putting this Ohio State defense into a hole where they're on the field too much, too early. and making sure the Nebraska crowd stays into it. And then at halftime, making sure that they turn that fire up and just really keep going in. And that thing is like, even if Nebraska's up 28, let's say 28-0 at halftime, in my opinion, Ohio State's definitely still in that football game with the way that Nebraska has played in some games, over the past couple years. And Ohio State is talented enough to just put up 28 quick unanswered points. I mean, we did see what they did against Miami of Ohio. It is Miami of Ohio, like you said, a MAC school. But when you're putting up 6 touchdowns in a quarter, that's a lot. So, but I'm 100% with you on this one. If Nebraska cannot win that turnover battle, if they're turning the ball over, they're just giving the football game away. And unfortunately, that's kind of what happened even with Wisconsin last year. It was actually a fairly close game until like the third quarter. And the turnovers started to hit, the mistakes and missed tackles. Kind of like the Colorado game. Things just all got out of hand. And then the better team that plays to finish was there. Wisconsin wanted to finish. Colorado wanted it more. Ohio State wanted it more. So whenever Nebraska decides that they're not going to let anybody and they want it more than everyone else, then that's when we'll start seeing a difference. I don't know if they got to that point to really understand how you finish, how you are a winner. I know Scott's been bringing in a lot of guys that are state champions or transfers that are champions at the JUCO level, or bringing in guys that were the top of the former team that they were with as transfer, and trying to bring in winners to, fester a winning mentality. But the one thing that, that sometimes is absent from some winners is that grit. Is that, man, we're getting our ass beat. Move out of my way. I'm going to get back in there. I'm ready. I'm going to go punch somebody back in the face. That's the thing is, a lot of times they get hit and they're just like, I'm losing. I'm embarrassed. I'm upset. I'm going to throw a pity party instead of getting back in and really fighting. So, no submitting. But it will be interesting. It's hard for me not to go. I really want to go. Well, we'll see. I'm trying to move some things around to make it happen, but we'll see. You're a lot closer than I am. I mean, you're what? 6 hours away? 8 hours? Not even?
I think it's about. Let's see. I went to Omaha. I drove up to Omaha. I think Omaha. I think it was like 6.5. Yeah, 7 hours to Lincoln.
It wouldn't even be that, because
there in 7.
once you get like Nebraska City, it's the same distance from Nebraska City to Omaha to Nebraska City to Lincoln. It's just you go west or you go north.
Yeah.
Really the only difference.
Yeah. So probably 6.5. Yeah, probably 6 hours, 6.5 hours. Yeah. I can make it easily. It's not a bad drive.
Might be worth it.
Let's talk about a couple more games.
All right, let's go.
We've got two games involving 2 ranked teams. We have Virginia traveling to Notre Dame. This is one of Notre Dame's 5 ACC games that they play every season. Virginia coming off of lackluster performance, as we already discussed, against Old Dominion. And Notre Dame coming off a really tough game against Georgia. That game, that was a terrific football game. We talked about this game last week. We said it was a 14-point favored. Georgia was a 14-point favorite over Notre Dame. And Notre Dame did not look like a 14-point underdog. They had the lead late in that game and couldn't hold it. And so Notre Dame is very good. And I expect them to take care of Virginia this week. Notre Dame is a 12-point favorite. At least they were when I looked at it this morning. Those lines can change. I just do the Tuesday morning lines when I do mine against the spread because I don't have enough time to keep up with it all the time. I just go with the opening lines. And so, I would expect Notre Dame, but Virginia, it's going to be a real test to see if Virginia really is real, and how well they can play against Notre Dame, because Virginia really hasn't played anybody this season. They beat Pittsburgh. They beat Florida State, but Florida State gave them a run. I think that game was 17-10. They beat Richmond, and they beat Old Dominion. So they haven't really, they beat Pitt at Pittsburgh. We know how good Pittsburgh can be. They haven't beat UCF, but close games. So Virginia hasn't really. We don't know how good they are, and this will be a good test for them. At the moment, they're the favorite to win the ACC Coastal. They control their own destiny, although I think everybody controls their destiny in ACC Coastal at the moment because they only played one conference game. So anybody can run the table and win the Coastal. But right now, Virginia appears to be that. So we'll see this week how good they look against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's, I'm a little bit scared of this because Notre Dame's coming off of a real battle against Georgia, physical game. We'll see how they do. 7 days later. I still like Notre Dame in this game. I think they can probably play a little subpar and still win, but Virginia's good enough that I think they can give Notre Dame a game.
Notre
Dame was impressive.
Virginia's really good when they get in their tempo. When they start getting their getting into tempo, getting into their groove, they look really good. Outside of that, they've looked pretty mediocre. So it's probably a closer game than it should be. Notre Dame is the more talented team of the two. So this one is it at Virginia? Or is it in South Bend?
It's at Notre Dame.
Okay, so I would lean Notre Dame in this game because it's in South Bend. But Notre Dame, I haven't been impressed with Notre Dame this year. I really haven't.
Pretty good against the pass. Notre Dame's good against the pass. Notre Dame defends the pass well. They actually defended the run pretty well against Georgia. That was the surprising part of that game Saturday. Was that Notre Dame actually, played very, very, very well against the run, and Georgia's awesome running game.
Well, so, their defensive style allows them to disrupt running lanes and blocking schemes. So that's where it's I don't think Georgia's really seen a team that up front was as disruptive as far as messing up those run lanes. And I think that's part of the problem. I don't think their defense is such it's really so great, but it's just I think they did a really good job of disrupting those running lanes and holding their gap assignments. Obviously, it wasn't enough to win the game, but I think they did an admirable job of it. It's something that a lot of teams can look at not only against Georgia but against Wisconsin too. But I'll lean.
Well, clearly, part of the problem with some of these teams not scheduling anybody tough early in the season is once they do end up playing somebody good, the players aren't necessarily prepared for the speed of the game. I mean, obviously, I mean, Georgia was averaging, 280 yards on the ground or something ridiculous like that. But it wasn't against Notre Dame. I mean, it wasn't against Notre Dame, we forget, was in the playoffs last year. They're a good team. And so, people were just dismissing Notre Dame like, they're just not going to be able to give Georgia a game. Well, that's not the case. And so, I think that, if you compare Georgia last week now to Virginia this week, Notre Dame should be able to handle Virginia pretty easily, except for the fact that they just played Georgia last week, and there's a physical games, and that holds true a lot of times. You have to see how well the team can bounce back from a tough loss like that. Virginia's going to be revved because every team goes into Notre Dame for the first time and plays with a little more enthusiasm because it's a big deal. I mean, I know Notre Dame's not like they were in the winning national championships in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s with Lou Holtz, but it's still a big deal to play Notre Dame. And so to go into Notre Dame and play them, and so Virginia's going to play with some enthusiasm, with some adrenaline, probably play a little bit over their head a little bit early on. We'll see how Notre Dame, because Virginia is a pretty good team. It's not like Virginia of the past, and Virginia is undefeated. We talked about the schedule, but they're still going in 4-0. They have conference wins over Pittsburgh and Florida State, and so I think that there's somebody that Notre Dame needs to pay attention to, because Virginia does have some weapons. So they haven't really exhibited them this year. They haven't scored a lot of points this year, but they have some weapons, and Notre Dame's going to need to play a complete football game to make sure they don't get upset here. But I don't think Virginia has the same. I think Notre Dame's a better team.
Yeah.
But better teams don't always win, as we've seen the last week especially. And this is. I don't believe I'm going to pick Notre Dame to cover this game. I don't think they're going to cover. I think 12 points is a lot, given the fact that neither one of these teams scores a ton of points. They're not high scoring teams. And so I think 12 is a lot in this game, especially to cover. I see Notre Dame winning, 27-17, something like that. Something like that. But teams get a few turnovers, and all of a sudden you turn 17 points into 31, just like Illinois turns 20 points into 38 last week, right?
Yep.
Because of turnovers. Or the other team doesn't get the points that they need. But given that in the other game involving ranked teams is USC traveling to Washington. I have seen all of USC's games. I have not seen Washington play this season. It just happens. They haven't.
I have twice.
I did not see the Washington Cal game, which is what I wanted to see, but I wasn't able to watch it because I don't get the Pac-12 network. DirecTV doesn't have it. They're in a pissing contest over.
It's on YouTube
and
though.
It's not on DirecTV, and so I haven't been able to see that. But USC Washington, that's a good game, and I think USC. I think a lot of people are dismissing USC because of the loss at BYU, but USC's a good team, and they have a lot of speed. They did not exhibit it against BYU. They had a bad game. They had a bad game offensively, but boy, they have some speed. And when that speed starts to, and that's how they beat Utah last week. They just had speed, and so we will see what happens. I'm going to stick with USC. I'm a USC homer here, I guess, this season. But, I think that team's playing with a chip on their shoulder. I think that they think that Clay Helton's going to get fired, and that they're just kind of trying to win for his job. And Washington's inconsistent. They beat the crap out of BYU, but that's. BYU after BYU had beaten USC, but I think both of those games were anomalies in a way, and that Washington scored more points than they just kind of ran it up, and USC just had a bad game offensively. I think it's a conference game. I think USC is playing well. And they're on their third quarterback, by the way. And, they went to Utah. Utah's better than Washington. So I think USC has a really good chance to win this game. They're 9.5-point underdog to Washington. I think they can clearly cover that. But I think they're going to win the game. I'm going to go with USC in this one.
So, for the first time in a long time, Stanford takes up against Oregon State in Oregon State. They're in Corvallis. This may end up being an interesting game because Oregon State has shown that they can put points up. And Stanford is clearly struggling this year. What would you make of this game? Again, this is probably not one of the marking games or ones you're really going to probably go and look at, but I think it becomes interesting at this point.
It is an interesting game. I think it's interesting from the standpoint that trying to figure out what's happened to Stanford. I mean, I think a lot of people actually had Stanford, giving Utah a real run for their money in the Pac-12 North.
Yeah.
And they just, they came out, they beat Northwestern. It was an ugly game, low scoring. They lose their starting quarterback for a game, and they go and they lose to USC, and then they lose to UCF. They get shacked. We just got smacked down by UCF. And then this past weekend they lose again, and you're going, wow, what is going on with them? Because it's just hard to understand. What's happened to them. We know that David Shaw didn't become a bad coach overnight, right? But Oregon just lit them up. I mean, I predicted Oregon to win. I didn't predict them to win that as one-sided as it was. But we now both know, and this is a little bit of a side when you move off here now. Oregon lost to Auburn the first week of the season. Probably should have won that game. And now we see how good Auburn is. And so now we're going, well, wait a second. As we always do, let's revisit that game. Oregon came within 7 seconds of winning that game against Auburn. And now they're really playing well in the Pac-12, and you're going, wow, all of a sudden Oregon's a real threat.
Yeah.
And so that translates now. Now we got to say, okay, kind of recalibrate. How good is Stanford? I think Stanford's better than Oregon State. I agree that Oregon State can put up some points, but I think Stanford is better than Oregon State, and I think Stanford's probably can win that game, but it's a lot closer. I mean, Stanford's only a 4-point favorite, which is unbelievable. At the beginning of the season, if you told me that Stanford's going to be a 4-point favorite
to Oregon State,
I told you you're crazy, right?
Right.
That's crazy. Stanford hasn't played that well, and so it's reflective of that. I think Stanford, I think Stanford's going to get their legs under them, and they're starting quarterbacks. I mean, Oregon's a lot better than anybody thought they were going to be, and people thought they were going to be pretty good. They're really good. Defensively, they're way better than I think most people thought. Because we never think of Oregon as a good defensive team. Traditionally, historically, it hasn't been.
Yeah.
They've just kind of outscored. They've outscored
people haven't given their due respect.
Good.
Well, that's the thing is because usually the teams that they're going up against are SEC teams or, that the thing is and it's really, or teams from the South. I just thought, I heard so many people say the year when it was Winston and Mariota went head-to-head out west, I said, this is going to be a close game. A lot closer than people think. And and so many people said, "Oh yeah, Oregon's going to get pushed around. They're going to get pushed around." But that's the thing is like Oregon pulls a lot of top defensive guys from Southern California. They get guys from Texas. They get guys from, from the Polynesian Islands. I mean, it's not like they don't get good talent. It's just that they're not in the SEC. I mean, we've seen a lot. There's a lot of good defenders that are in the NFL that are from the Pac-12, but because they don't give the same respect. And again, I have my own theory that I've went off on time and time again. But you know what? I think what this really does for me, it makes me sit back and think, what is Auburn? What should we be expecting of Auburn? Is Auburn? See, that's the thing, because seeing them play this weekend against Texas A&M, I thought I had Texas A&M win that game. Clearly, Auburn won. But
I did too.
It's kind of has Jimbo Fisher kind of fallen off, or has Gus Malzahn stepped up? Because a lot of people over the last couple of years have really thought Gus Malzahn has fallen off and has been calling for his job. Whereas everybody's been praising Jimbo Fisher, and clearly he made the best move he could make for his career by leaving and going to the SEC and going to Texas A&M, who really hasn't, outside of, Johnny Manziel surprising people, winning as a redshirt freshman, and then, him beating Alabama one year. They really haven't done much of anything. They haven't done really much of anything different than they did when they were in the Big 12. They've caused some excitement, but really hasn't challenged for anything.
Wait. They did have Johnny football, and they did challenge for the SEC West that year. They beat Alabama, so they've done a little bit, but not much. I agree with you. But look who A&M has lost to this season. They've lost to Clemson,
Auburn,
and Auburn.
Yeah,
number 1 and number 8. So, actually, I think Auburn's a little higher this.
As the
week,
thing is, I don't know. I'm struggling with Auburn because. See, that's where I'm looking for. The new poll, the college football playoff polls to come out, because I don't know if Auburn's number 8. That's what I'm struggling with. Is Auburn really number 8? Because I've watched them play against Oregon, and Oregon clearly looked like the better team. But Oregon's ranked lower.
You think that Auburn's that Auburn's 3 or 4, because Auburn has beaten Oregon, who, by the way, Oregon hasn't given up a touchdown since the Auburn game.
Yeah.
They've given up 15 points. 15 points in 3 games. Oregon's really good. Auburn has beaten Texas A&M and Oregon. You can make a case that Auburn should be like 4. Alabama hasn't beaten anybody. I mean, I'm just saying you could make the case. Alabama has not beaten anybody. Why are they number 2?
But you know what? Here's the crazy. So this is one thing people have trouble wrapping their mind around. Just because Auburn beat Oregon, I don't think that Auburn's better than Oregon.
They beat them. How else are you going to determine that? It's you got to play it on the field.
I mean, I understand.
I mean, come on.
I understand what you're saying. But all that really does, it means that, and when we talked about it, the week that after week 1, and we both were kind of in agreement that, Oregon probably wins 7 out of 10 of those games. It just happened to be the one that actually happened in this year that mattered. Auburn won it. We could run back the tape on it, but I'm just saying.
I think they're pretty.
Because that's where we're seeing. So you're telling me, because they're telling me,
I think they're pretty evenly matched.
We have Oregon that's number 13, but Cal is 15. And then Washington is 17?
Don't get me started on the polls.
Like,
The polls mean nothing. The polls
and then
mean nothing.
USC, who
The
is
polls
just
don't mean much.
who has not looked good.
The polls,
Number
the polls
21.
the polls are, but Matthew, the polls are based on a starting point of a preseason poll, and then it's barely calibrated. Every
It's
week.
based from a flawed
Auburn,
beginning.
Auburn moves up. Auburn beats Texas A&M after also beating Oregon, and Oregon now we know is really good.
Yeah.
Auburn, I saw this on the Paul Feinbaum show today, is Auburn moves up one spot in the polls. The same move that Ohio State made by beating up on a nobody Miami of Ohio team, right? Ohio State hasn't beaten anybody. Auburn's beaten 2 top 15 Power 5 schools. Right? Okay, I'm silent. So, but with that, I've got to go. I've got to get up at 4:30 tomorrow morning, so I got to get out, get out of here. So,
all right.
I would love. I think what I'm going to do next week is I think I'm going to do my own top 15 or so based on who people have played and the way they look, as opposed to, the polls. Like I'll do my own college football playoff committee, like a committee of one, right? If we're starting over.
Well, that's what we talked about
right?
with James with a couple weeks back with the group of editors doing our own ranking.
Yeah.
Called CHT on
I think we
Sports
should.
Top 25 or
All
whatever.
right, well, text me on that.
All right. There's Kevin Kress, ladies and gentlemen. So be sure to head on over to Amazon. Just type in PK Frazier. It's like Tommy Frazier. That's funny. So, I got this. So, those of you that are listening on radio can't really see this, but on Facebook, got that for my decoration here. That'll be going up soon. It's a Nebraska 1995 Championship Sports Illustrated. It's a special edition. We'll go up with the one from 97. So, I noticed a lot of people saw and commented about some of the decorations and stuff here. NCAA football, whatever. Games up on the wall. Got this book. A few things. Haven't got put up yet. So, this will all eventually change. So, anyways, I'm going to get back in here into college football. When I'm taking a look here at college football, if I'm looking at the SEC West, I look at LSU as clearly, in my opinion, clearly a better team than Auburn. They play on October 26th. So we're still a few weeks, over a month from that happening. But for LSU, it is breaking down like this. They have Utah State this week. They go against a good quarterback. There, Love is one of the top quarterback prospects that people are looking at for this upcoming NFL draft. They have Florida, who under Trask look much better, much more fluid. But I This is why I have trouble with preseason polls. I don't think Florida's a top 15 team. So when we come out with our polls here in probably week 7, so after week 6, we'll come out with a poll, because now you've had your out of conference games pretty much all done, unless you're the SEC, where you have a nobody, pad, padding the stats, high school, directional, community college team come in like second to last game of the year, which Auburn does too. In Northwestern State, LSU did that. LSU did that the third game of the season. But still, looking at Utah State, Florida, Mississippi State, those should all be blowouts like the other ones were. With the exception of Texas. Texas wasn't a blowout. It was a good fought game. At best, I think Auburn, LSU may look like that Texas game. But LSU should win that. LSU has all the pieces to beat Alabama this year, in my opinion. Whether they do or not will heavily depend on being able to get takeaways, winning the turnover battle. That's going to be the main thing in that game. Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Texas A&M should be one-sided victories for them. So, Alabama is their one big test, and then Auburn could be a potential test. But I can't, again, just watching Auburn play, I can't say that Auburn is really necessarily a top 5, 10 team. I don't know. They've won games that they needed to win to remain undefeated. But I want to see Auburn play some more in conference games because I thought that with Texas A&M that was a very losable game. They came out on top. They won by 8, but Texas A&M really looked shaky at times. So maybe it's just that Auburn is better than Texas A&M, and that's what we got. So again, a lot of what there is to operate off these teams is what we have from preseason. That's why I think we need at least 6 games. At least 6 games. I mean, Texas A&M they lost to Clemson by 14. They lose to Auburn by 8. Now let's see what they do against Arkansas, which should be very one-sided. Although the Arkansas seems to have kind of figured it out with the quarterback. Let's see that sometimes it's just simply making small change like that, like quarterback. So, I want to see more of it. Missouri bounced back good this week. I know a lot of people were very worried after the loss to Wyoming, the 37-31 loss to Wyoming. Came back 38-7 victory over West Virginia, directional Southeast Missouri. They bombed on, and then they win by 20 over South Carolina, a South Carolina team that had Alabama on the ropes for at least a half. Now they're looking at a Troy team that is trying to continue to improve. They're 2-1. They're 2-1 right now, so they're coming off of a pretty one-sided victory over Akron. And they've put up 35 or more points in every game this season. They have a game against Arkansas State before they play Missouri. But Mizzou's will be on a bye this week. So the SEC has several teams to watch out for, especially in the East. I think Georgia's pretty one-sidedly the top team in the East. Alabama in the West, but I think Alabama is at a much greater risk of losing or not representing the West in the conference championship than Georgia is. Because Texas A&M and Auburn and LSU are all sitting there as teams that could potentially put hurt on Alabama. And then that's not even to mention the conference championship game where they would have to face Georgia. I don't sell Alabama short. I'm not saying Alabama can't beat every team in the country handily, because they can. But what I am saying regarding Alabama is it's not a cakewalk. Auburn and LSU and likely Texas A&M will have to be hurdles that they're going to have to face this season. So this week, we'll see Ole Miss, who has just been treacherous. Then they head to College Station. Then they have Tennessee, Arkansas at home, which should be very one-sided. Then they have LSU come in, go to Mississippi State, then have a fluff game, and then Auburn. So what plays to their advantage is, and I know a lot of people don't notice this. So they'll have their non-conference, their neutral site game against another Power 5 school that's out of conference. Then they'll have, some either, then they'll have a group of 5 or an independent school that they play. Usually nobody that's of any sort of threat. Then we'll see them either come into conference or play another, directional school, an FCS school. South Carolina kind of gave them a run for their money for half, like I said. But then when you get into conference, regardless if it's buys or not, they always have some weaker part of the conference, Ole Miss. Then they have Texas A&M. Then they have Tennessee, Arkansas. Bottom part of the conference. 3 bottom part of conferences, LSU, Mississippi State, and then your fluff just before Arkansas, just before the Iron Bowl. Every single year, when you look at Alabama's schedule, it is layered literally like this. You can go back every single year. Go ahead. They hardly ever have tough games 2 weeks in a row and almost never 3 weeks in a row, regardless of who they play year in and year out. So, Texas A&M, LSU, Arkansas. So, that's really what the bulk of Alabama's schedule leans on, those three teams. So, let me go to the phone lines here. Welcome in one of our top college football contributors, Sir James Bell. How you doing tonight, James?
Yo, what's going on? Just joining in. What's good with you?
Just kind of going over, bringing out kind of the strength of the conferences. About to get into my picks for the week.
True. Yeah, I think I caught you on the tail end of you talking about a couple of SEC teams. So.
Yeah, I got. Yeah, it's like I said, the West is tougher than the East, and I was saying, Georgia has an easier path to winning the East than Alabama winning the West, because I think LSU as a team looks better this year than they have in any other years, and Joe Burrow has really stepped up to look like what they've he's as advertised, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you got, Joe Burrow coming into, his bearings at quarterback at LSU, and I think they may have one of the most talented teams in the country as far as like the offensive side of the ball. A lot of people out there talking about Alabama, of course they've been consistent the past 4 or 5 years plus, but LSU this year has been the most, efficient offense in the SEC right now. Scoring over 231 points with, winning their first game in the conference 66-38, like putting up 66 points in the SEC. Like, man, that's crazy,
Yeah, and it's that's the thing is, like, several of the games this week that I'm looking at for my picks, like Mississippi State, Auburn, and Kentucky, South Carolina. Those two games could be close. Again, I think Auburn, Mississippi State could be close because I still have reservations about Auburn. I don't know. I've watched all their games this year. It's just that I've been really uneasy at times about Auburn's offense, and the defense seems to catch breaks. It's not like they're forcing the turnovers. Really, it's not really. They're taking advantage. I mean, they're not forcing their will upon the other side. They're being, I feel more they're the benefactor of mistakes rather than really, being forceful about it. So, it's interesting to see what they do against Mississippi State. It should tell me a little bit more. The Auburn game, I think that game that they weren't the better team. Auburn, Oregon. I thought Oregon was the better team in that game. They just happened to be the team that lost too. Texas A&M, I don't know. It was a really sloppy game, both sides. So I really don't know what to make of Texas A&M either. That's the thing. At times they look like they were going to compete with Clemson, but Clemson was playing really sloppy too. Clemson has looked really sloppy this year. Trevor Lawrence hasn't looked as sharp and refined as he did last season. So,
that's been, something I don't think that has been, brought up here so far is that, it's basically been Clemson. They've gone through, all of their games, and, it seems like some of them have been pretty easy, but they haven't really gotten into their own as far as their offense yet. And, when you have the skill position players that they have, they're supposed to have, one of the best, running backs in the country, and things just haven't really developed out there. Other than maybe the Syracuse game, and that was like in the second half, basically when they pulled away from them. You haven't really seen much as far as like their first string offense really click on all cylinders. It's like they're kind of like mixing things up, a bit with their, with their backfield with Etienne and Lindsey Dixon, and then you have all of those receivers. Use like every single receiver they got. Like they use about 8 receivers out there on the field so far this season. So that's one thing I'm looking at, and on the other side of the ball, I haven't really seen any standout guys there in the front seven. So, but my thing is the problem is where in Clemson's schedule are you going to see Clemson really tested? They have the game against North Carolina coming up this week, but I'm like, you really don't see like where they could, have anything as far as like a real test anywhere. Is it going to be at Louisville or, at NC State? That's the next 2 road games that they have after this UNC game. That's it. So you won't really have much of a gauge of where Clemson is going to be until the end of the season.
And that's the thing, is like you're looking at these running backs, Etienne is 15th right now in college football and rushing, tied at 15th.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of backs that have looked a lot better. Hubbard being one of them from Oklahoma State.
Oh, yeah.
He's looked a lot better. I think Cam Akers at times have looked a lot better. J.K. Dobbins definitely has looked better.
Yeah,
Jonathan Taylor.
Akers has basically been bailing out Florida State like Dalvin Cook used to bail out Florida State when a certain quarterback was there. And, of course, you have Jonathan
Benjamin
Taylor,
had a lot to do with bailing out, too. So.
Yeah. And you have Jonathan Taylor out in Wisconsin, man. I mean, he's probably, he should be amongst the top contenders for the Heisman Trophy. Or
I think Khalil Herbert at Kansas has looked really good. Larry Roundtree looked really good this weekend for Missouri. I mean, I could go on and on with running backs this season.
And what's crazy is that Jonathan Taylor isn't even in the top 5 in rushing. You named J.K. Dobbins, you named Cam Akers, Chuba Hubbard out of Oklahoma State is up there.
Yeah,
at the top. But
9 touchdowns, 642 yards. He's averaging 6.2 a carry. I mean, I didn't say Marvin Kinsey Jr. out of Colorado State, but I mean, he's averaging 8.2 a carry. He's number 2 in the country right now, and Kylan Hill out of Mississippi State. He has looked good. Oh, by the way, I'll go ahead and just speaking kind of FSU and the running back bailing out. Now that they made the change to Hornibrook, I have FSU beating NC State this week. How do you like that?
I mean, here's my thing, man. I don't know about many, a lot of other people, but I hadn't really been sold on James Blackman, since he had, been placed in the starting position over when our friend Sly got hurt in the Alabama game a couple of years ago, which was once again Jimbo Fisher's fault. But ever since then, you really haven't seen much of a time when Blackman was comfortable in the pocket, whether it's a bad offensive line or not, but he hadn't really made good decisions in the pocket. So why not just have a more experienced guy there in the pocket, that could, make the right decision, make the right play, make the safe play, and just, go off of that. If you want to, play the, the ball control game, do that. And then see what your defense could do. If you made all of these moves on the defensive side of the ball, and you have my boy Tim Levitt over there, they worked together before. So I'm like, hey, try to get your defense to, step up, make some plays, and then take advantage of bad plays on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it's he had to make that move. He had to. That's what's been killing FSU all season. So that I got 16 picks. I'm gonna go ahead and we had how long left in the show? 30 minutes or so. So I'm gonna go ahead and get in my picks, and I'll have you chime in. So FSU, NC State. I have FSU. Navy heads to Memphis. I picked Memphis in that game. I think right now Memphis is favored in that game by 14, but I don't think Memphis covers in that game. I got Penn State, Maryland. I think it's going to be a really good game. Maryland has a lot of ability to put points up, and I think that this could be a game that they could do that, but they struggle with issues and turnovers. Penn State has been able to get their competition to play down, and Penn State's favored by 8. I have Penn State winning this, but I don't think Penn State covers either. Arizona State at Cal. I think Cal continues their run and their roll. I have Cal beating Arizona State. Texas Tech at Oklahoma. It's a clear-cut win for Oklahoma. Northwestern at Wisconsin. Wisconsin may shut out Northwestern. Kansas at TCU.
Yeah.
I got Kansas figuring it out again at TCU. I got Kansas upsetting. It's my upset of the week. Kansas over TCU. Virginia at Notre Dame. I got Notre Dame winning at home. More so because they are at home. Let me take a look at I think the line was a little high on this one. I don't know. I'll take a look and see where the line is at on that one and come back to it. We got Wake Forest, who is now ranked, going into Boston College. Well, I have Boston College winning at home and giving and Wake Forest immediately leaving the top 25. Minnesota at Purdue. Purdue winning. I think it's not going to be that close of a game at the end. I think Purdue, I don't know what the line is, but Purdue covers, whatever it is. Mississippi State at Auburn. I have Auburn winning. K-State at Oklahoma State. K-State has every bit of the ability to beat Oklahoma State because I don't think it's going to be, in some respects, especially with the run game, that different than Mississippi State.
Seconds.
I just think Oklahoma is that much better of a passing offense, and I don't think K-State's going to be able to slow them down enough. UCLA at Arizona. UCLA showed last week against Wazoo that they can score points. The over-under on that game last week, Wazoo and UCLA, was 58. Both teams covered the 58 over-under themselves.
60 seconds.
I have UCLA beating Arizona, not by not in necessarily that fashion. NC State, or I already covered that. Kentucky at South Carolina. South Carolina just seems to having a season they can't catch a break. I don't think they catch a break against Kentucky. They lose at home against Kentucky. Wazoo heads to Utah. Wazoo is going to continue to put up points and put up numbers. I think we watching these previous teams, the teams these last few weeks, including SoCal, putting up the points and being able to show that they, through the air that they can make things happen. I have Wazoo winning that, but let's not forget Wazoo ran for over 100 yards in that game too last week. So I think this Wazoo team goes in and beats Utah. Utah, their second loss, and we really start to see how the Pac-12 cannibalizes itself. So which ones am I getting wrong, James?
You went through a lot of them.
Oh, yeah. I went through 16.
That Memphis-Navy game, Penn State-Maryland on Friday. I wish I won't be able to make that one. Northwestern Wisconsin, that's another home game for Wisconsin after blowing out Michigan. This should be another blowout. I feel that will be another blowout. I got Memphis over Navy. I got Penn State squeaking by Maryland. What else was there? You did OU Texas Tech.
Yeah, OU in a blowout. Actually, the one game.
OU in a blowout.
So if I added a 17th game, it would be Stanford, who is actually only a 4.5 point favorite over Oregon State.
Ooh.
I'm taking
a 4-point favorite against Oregon State.
I'm taking the Beavers.
Man, y'all, I hate Stanford. I just don't like them. Never liked them. They had that history of just barely being good enough to win one or two Pac-12 titles, but never in contention to compete for a national championship or be in the national championship discussion. So with them, losing to UCF the way that they did, that basically, knocked them off pretty much. And then Oregon, beat them. So this is like 3 straight losses for them. So for me, I say screw them. Hopefully they have a 4th straight loss, and they'll be, basically irrelevant, as they should be. You did have Kansas State at Oklahoma State. That's going to be an interesting game. Oklahoma State coming off that loss to Texas Saturday night.
And I picked Oklahoma State to beat Texas, which came close.
Yeah, came close there, but yeah, that's going to be fairly intriguing game. But yeah, I think Kansas State may pull that one off. Talked about NC State, Florida State, Kentucky, South Carolina. I don't know, man. I don't know about that game, man. I don't know if I could really pick that game.
Yeah, that's a tough game. It should be a really close game.
South Carolina, and that's a pivotal game for both teams being in the SEC East. Both have lost, twice in the SEC. Like I said, Kentucky shouldn't have lost to Florida. Florida got away with that game. They stole that game. And South Carolina got, humiliated at the end against Alabama. So, I don't know. I don't know who's going to come out of that one. Really don't.
That was my against the ropes pick this week. I really think right now South Carolina is favored by 2.5. Normally the home team is favored by 3. Vegas gives them 3.
Yeah,
and in some places they are 3, but I'm seeing they're 2.5 is what it first came out at, and it's went up to 3. But that's the thing. If Vegas thought at the beginning it's only 2.5, and it's went up to 3 since then, that probably means that there's something that tells them Kentucky does have the ability to go into South Carolina and win that game.
Go in and steal it, yeah.
See, that's the thing is, just like if you were going to bet Hawaii, Nevada, and it's at Nevada, so it's not in Hawaii. Nevada is only a 2.5 point favorite there too, or 2. If you look, it's went down to 2, and I see a 1.5. So if I was going to say pick a winner, I'd probably pick Hawaii to beat Nevada, even though Nevada's tough at home. Because it's saying that, there's something that is really leaning people to think that the home team isn't going to win there. Michigan State is a 14-point favorite over Indiana at home, but it's because they lost to Arizona State. They should cover. Honestly, just looking at it, they should cover. Clemson is a 28.5-point favorite to North Carolina. But with the way North Carolina has played this year, Clemson shouldn't cover the spread there.
Yeah, they shouldn't. You did talk about Virginia, Notre Dame. Notre Dame should pull that one off. But the game that I'm interested in is USC at Washington.
Yes.
That's going to be fairly interesting there. I think it was 2 years ago. It wasn't 2 years ago. It was 4 years ago that Washington was like within the top 6 or 7 or something. Came into the game against USC undefeated. USC wasn't really, a like top 15 team or maybe even top 20. They may have had 1 or 2 losses, but USC went to Seattle and was able to steal that game from Washington. Here, I see this could, possibly be the same way. USC is 3-1, and they lost to BYU by 3 points. I think they had the lead in that game and lost it. So that's going to be a real, toss-up game, and it's a very important game for USC because if they get that win, then they still be at the top of the Pac-12 South. So that could be very important for them going into the off week and then facing Notre Dame on the road on October 12th. So that's going to be. I think that's my marquee game of the week right there, USC Washington, because that one to me is going to be, more intriguing than the other game with two top 25 teams that I see, Virginia and Notre Dame. So,
yeah. So I think so. That thing is like, I think I have USC in that. Actually, that's what I picked. I picked USC, and for exactly the same reasons you said, because they have had a history of being able to go up there and win there. And, the thing is, whatever's happening in administration there with USC and, trying to get Clay Helton out and whatnot, that thing is are they playing for his job? Yeah, probably. More than likely so. But at the same time, these kids are just, they're playing because they want to win. Because they came there understanding that they were, SC should be back. They should be winning a winning program. And they don't want to be the laughingstock. They've struggled in areas that they feel like they shouldn't have struggled in. I've talked to a few guys that graduated last year. It's just like they really they really undershot the target. They really did, and that's the thing is, they don't want to go out like this. So I see them playing well. I mean, I don't think there's much that's going to save Hilton's job because they're going to have a new athletic director. And the new athletic director will start moving forward with rooting out people from before. And, I think they'll just let him end up playing it out, which is something they haven't done. But that's the thing is, I think USC needs to start doing some things that they haven't done. Firing Lane Kiffin on the tarmac. I mean, did it need to happen? No, it probably didn't, because he was given what he had. He was doing a lot with what he had. He shouldn't have been winning or competing the way he did with what he had, with all the sanctions. The fact that he even took the job, that should be, that they should have gave more of a chance there. So if I want to add on, I'm going to add on a few other games. These are I got a couple group of 5 games and one other game. FAU over UNC Charlotte. UNC Charlotte's actually favored in that game. Cincy at Marshall. Marshall's favored in that game. Marshall looks pretty decent this year, but I have Cincy winning that game. Iowa State at Baylor. Baylor's favored by 3.5 points. I think ISU wins by probably at least a touchdown against Baylor. Iowa State, I think, are getting back on track to where they're moving up in the Big Ten Conference, and I think their trend is going to continue moving upwards. So, hey, James, we got about 10 minutes left in the show. So, I wanted to see here. I want to touch on the NFL for a few minutes. Did you catch many of the games this weekend?
No, college or NFL?
NFL.
Which games were out here? Okay, of course I had the Baltimore Kansas City game over here.
Perfect.
In the D.C. area.
Let's start with that game. What do you make of what the Ravens are doing?
They have it pretty good, but it's still a long ways until, they can really compete with, the likes of Kansas City or New England right now. The thing that's, fortunate for Baltimore is that they have Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati in their division, and none of those teams are looking very good right now. So they do have that, hang on. Their defense is, very good until they meet a very good offense like Kansas City. So, and the thing with Kansas City though, as far as like their offense goes, they are very deep on the skill positions. They're set with Travis Kelce, but I mean they have McCoy at running back. I'm like, my goodness, man, they have McCoy at running back. Who do they have? Williams as their backup. They're at running back right now. Damian Williams there. Darrell Williams, so they're able to, execute pretty well. But Tyreek Hill does have an injury, so they're gonna have to deal with that. Sammy Watkins stepping up. I mean, they're very deep. They're in the skill positions, man. So, I mean, I see the Chiefs, contending to be, number one in the AFC this year. So you did have that. What was another game that I was able to see? I forgot what the.
Let me touch on Baltimore real quick. I think Lamar Jackson did an admirable job of hanging in there with Pat Mahomes. He was 22 for 43. He put up 267 yards. He didn't get a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
He was sacked three times. I would like to see them improve that offensive line a bit more, but Ingram did Ingram did get 103 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Lamar Jackson did rush for a touchdown on 8 different attempts. So that's the thing is, like, they got the scores they needed, but they weren't through the air. But they don't have to be. That's the thing. They don't have to be. And I think what they found out works against Kansas City last year worked against Kansas City this year, in the respect that they can keep the game close enough. Now, other teams need to look at that. Not many other teams have personnel to model that, but Kansas City just shows that they're that much better. They won by 5, but again, they won by 5. It could have been a more one-sided game, but the thing I like about the Ravens is they lead the league in average time of possession. And that's a big stat, because that means they're doing more to control or affect the outcome of the game. And if they continue to do that, they're going to get more of the results that they're looking for, because they don't have to rely on the run game just to come from Mark Ingram or just to come from Edwards. Lamar Jackson can add to that and complement to that. And I think that this wide receiving core they have here, that they have in Baltimore, although it's not, it's not a heavily touted offensive core. I think Boyles was a great guy for them to get. And Snead was a good pickup as well, and so was Roberts. I think those 3 guys are really good, and that's not to mention Hollywood Brown. So there's two really good draft picks there, and 2 really good free agent signings that really have made have made this receiving core really complete, and I think very underrated. So I look for them to continue on that role. Right now, if I looked at divisions, I'd have them probably winning their division, because the only real competition I think they have is the Browns, which probably is not competition. Although the Browns are, they have a good defense. They have guys. They have dudes. But that thing is, until they can figure out how the Browns can figure out how to put stuff together, they're going to keep looking like they are. So.
Yeah. So, yeah, there was that. The other games, let me see, the other games that were on here on Sunday was the Lions-Eagles game. And I was semi-surprised that the Lions got that game, but the Eagles' offense is like kind of falling apart with injuries. So, so that that was something there that I saw. I still think that they could have pulled off the win. I mean, the game was 20-17 Lions in the fourth quarter. It would have felt like, with the Eagles being at home, they would be able to, pull off the win like they did against the Redskins. That's their only win that they have so far. Is that when they against the Redskins on, I think there was opening weekend. So there was that game that was on over here, and you also had the Steelers and 49ers. So 49ers are undefeated, but they played the Steelers there, and that game was fairly close, but they were able to pull off the win there. Of course, a lot of people were impressed with the New Orleans Saints going to Seattle and getting that win on the road.
Yeah,
and they pretty much had control of most of that game until the fourth quarter. So
that's the crazy thing. I mean, if you said that the Detroit Lions would be sitting with no losses after 3 weeks and in second place in the NFC North, and then the Saints would be sitting at 2-1 at the top of the NFC South with no Drew Brees. I mean, I think most people would say, like, yeah, preseason. And then, by the way,
so there's that.
One of my guys I had been looking at, I had talked about in the draft, finally is starting. Kyle Allen in Carolina. I think Kyle Allen put up a pretty decent game. What do you think about him in Carolina?
Well, I mean, it looks like, and I don't want to say it, but it looks like that might be the start. Regardless of what happens in the rest of the season, I think that's going to be the start of the Carolina Panthers slowly getting Cam Newton out of Carolina. And I mean, it really shouldn't much be that way, but the things that Cam was able to do, sometimes he had to do it, but he is what he is. He's a good athlete, but he's not a great quarterback. And the previous game that they had, I think there was a Monday night game, right? It was either Monday night. Yeah, I think it was a Monday night game. No, that was a Thursday night game. That's what it was. That was a Thursday night game against those Bucks. Yeah. I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, you couldn't even hit dudes that were wide open out there on the field. You couldn't put your full strength on your lower body to make the throws that you had to make. And that right there just said, he got to be put on the bench, man. He's hurt. Whether he's hurt or whatever. And some people never really have been sold on him being a very, accurate and effective quarterback throwing the ball. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you had Kyle Allen, doing his thing, 261 yards, 4 touchdowns. It was against the Cardinals, but hey, I mean, it's something where you kind of like seeing some type of consistency from the quarterback position, and I think you kind of saw the offense of the Carolina Panthers being executed the way that they want to have it there in Carolina. So that's that's what I got out of that. And of course, you have Daniel Jones doing what he did to the Tampa Bay Bucks. But for me, this is the Giants.
Have you changed your opinion on Daniel Jones at all?
The what?
Have you changed your opinion on Daniel Jones at all?
No, not really. Because one, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and two, because in that game you had the injury to Saquon Barkley, so he's going to be out at least 4 weeks. So now it's going to be okay. Now they don't have.
He should basically sit out for the season at this point. If I was Saquon Barkley,
he should.
I would call it a season. I don't know. I think it's too high of a risk right now for him to sit here and really subject himself to playing when what does he have to really play for? I mean, he's not too far. Again, this is second year in the league, right? Second year? He was rookie of the year last year. Yeah, so his second year.
Yeah. Yep.
He's a couple years from really being able to negotiate that deal. I mean, I would hate to see something happen to where some nagging, prolonged injury came about because they're encouraging him to play through pain when he doesn't need to. And
hey, I mean, and you don't want to have it to the point where he's almost like Todd Gurley right now.
Exactly.
Todd Gurley. What it was, man, looked like, over a year ago, he was one of the best backs in the league going into, almost into the last season, going into the playoffs, and then you get to the divisional playoff round against the Dallas Cowboys, and then they start putting in C.J. Anderson, and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Like, C.J. Anderson?
Yeah.
You put in C.J. Anderson over Todd Gurley? And then
Anderson balled.
Pretty much a no-show at the Super Bowl against the Patriots. And, I mean, and going into this season, I mean, I got him in one of my fantasy teams, and he ain't done nothing. And I'm like, goodness gracious, what is going on with Todd Gurley?
So
and the thing about it is, too, and what's crazy about it is that Gurley got that deal. He got that new deal. You know what I'm saying? And now look at the Rams, man.
You know what? Just to kind of get into terrible teams for a minute, the Dolphins are clearly the worst team in football right now. Not only are they bad on the field, they just seem like a shit show. It seems like a complete dumpster fire down there in Miami. I don't want to say that they're tanking, but they're clearly doing that. The Jets are obviously they're still a month away from probably getting some key players back. And even if they do, I mean, what are they going to do? The Bills are clearly better than both the Jets and the Dolphins. And the Patriots are going to win that division. So that's the thing is, it just seems like those two teams are best off tanking because there's really zero expectations on them. But what I think would be hilarious if those two teams are tanking when they faced each other, if one of the teams decided to go ahead and forfeit, to get the edge on the other one, I think that would be hilarious. It would suck as a fan, but just as a move to be like, yeah, we're making sure that we're worse than you. We give up. We'll give you the game. We'll give you the win. You know? I just think that would be hilarious. It'd be unprecedented, but, you know, I'll leave it up to the Dolphins and Jets to do some crap like that, right?
That would be crazy once they face each other twice, and see who ends up being the worst team there. But what is it about? Yeah, that's pretty much mostly what I could cover here, man. About the wind down here. So see what you got left.
Well, that pretty much covers the show for this week. So make sure everybody tune in next week here to the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. Be sure to check it out over on Spreaker. Download the free Spreaker app. Makes things a lot easier. Follow us everywhere on social media. Thank you again for those of you that watch the show live over on Facebook Live. And check us out on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, everywhere. So I'm out for this week. Peace.